HAE International friends. It's Tony here, and I'm honored to introduce our second virtual global conference medical presentation, which will be delivered by another of our distinguished global HAE thought leaders, Dr. Markus Magерль, who is professor of dermatology and allergy at the prestigious Charité University Hospital in Berlin, Germany. Vielen Dank, Marcus, for graciously sharing your time and expertise by participating in our virtual global conference.
Sehr gerne, Tony. It's my pleasure to participate in this HAE Global Virtual Meeting. I expected to be in Frankfurt today or tomorrow, but things have changed, and I'm looking forward to a nice meeting.
Well, that's great. And Professor Magерль is going to speak about the importance of an HAE treatment plan, improving patient quality of life, and the research landscape with a focus on future HAE therapies. Marcus, the medical presentations delivered by you and Professor Riedel have always been the most popular sessions in past global conferences, so no doubt the HAE community is very excited about hearing from you today.
Thank you, Tony, for your kind words. It's, again, a pleasure to be here. I will give an update on the topics you mentioned, and many things have changed in the last years, and I will give you a presentation of 30, maybe 40 minutes about these things that have changed. I will share my slides with you. I'm from the Charité Hospital in Berlin, and we run an angioedema clinic, and this angioedema clinic has underwent some special challenges in the last weeks and months due to COVID-19. I will include that in my lecture today, monitoring the HAE treatment plan and future therapies and areas of research. Just to repeat it quickly, I think Mark Riedel talked about it in more detail. You see here the cascade, the kinin cascade in a blood vessel in a patient with HAE, in the situation of HAE, of C1 inhibitor deficiency. And you will see the factor 12 activates kallikrein, and kallikrein on the one hand reactivates factor 12, and on the other hand generates bradykinin, and the excess of bradykinin leads to a high permeability of the blood vessel and subsequently to swelling. The swellings are on the extremities, genitals, very often in the face and disfiguring. These swellings can be in the gut, very painful, lasting for 5 days, going along with vomiting. You know that better than me, and many of you will have experienced laryngeal attacks in the past or know people who did, and that's a dreadful situation. We have a couple of options to treat HAE. And one of these options we have is to replace the missing or the deficient C1 inhibitor. That's well known for almost 40 years now. It can be used intravenously, subcutaneously, on demand for prophylaxis. It's well tolerated. A couple of brands, plasma-derived and recombinant drugs are available, and this is, I think, one of the most basic treatments of hereditary angioedema, well known and absolutely safe. We can block bradykinin, or more precise, the bradykinin B2 receptor on the vessel wall, and that makes bradykinin not work on its receptor, not transfer its activation, and it's given subcutaneously on demand. And for 1 year now, we have a treatment focusing on kallikrein, at least in Europe. In the US, the patients had some experience with ecallantide, focusing on kallikrein as well. But lanadelumab is an antibody with an excellent outcome, and as far we can judge it right now, excellent safety and working quite good in the patients with HAE. So we can use these drugs. We have these approaches for on-demand treatment and or for long-term prophylaxis. So icatibant is only for on-demand treatment. Lanadelumab is only for long-term prophylaxis. C1 inhibitor can be given as on-demand or long-term prophylaxis. It can be given subcutaneously and intravenously. It's important to say that all patients need on-demand treatment. All patients should have on-demand treatment at home. All patients should be taught to apply the on-demand treatment, should be able for self-treatment. That's a basic of HAE care. But many of the patients might need long-term prophylaxis, at least for a phase in their life. Long-term prophylaxis can be very beneficial for many patients. And as all treatments, on-demand and long-term prophylaxis, all treatments need a critical assessment from time to time. But who knows when these critical assessments should be done and how often these critical assessments should be done. And we get an answer from the latest guideline, the WAO IACI guideline from 2018. And the answer is, we recommend that patients are evaluated for long-term prophylaxis at every visit. At every visit, we should critically assess if the treatment, the current treatment is still optimal for the patient, or if we have to change something. For example, if we consider long-term prophylaxis, we have a lot of things to consider, but I think most patients and most experts agree that disease activity, quality of life, and control of attacks by on-demand treatment are the key factors to consider when long-term prophylaxis when long-term prophylaxis is considered. Beyond this, the patient's preferences play a role, the severity of hereditary angioedema, the history of laryngeal attacks, the social situation, and last but not least, the availability of drugs in the country. Some things we can't measure, other things we can measure, and we can measure control of attacks, quality of life, and disease activity. To measure disease activity, there is the angioedema activity score, the AAS7. It's a questionnaire that asks once daily the question, have you had a swelling episode in the last 24 hours? If the patient marks no, the data entry is done for this day. If the patient marks yes, there are a couple of other questions to answer. And with this, with the sum of these answers, there's a score from a daily score of 15 points and a weekly score of a total of of 29 points. 105 points in total, and in this example it's 29 points, and so we can measure the disease activity. However, because the angioedema episodes in many patients are not that frequent, we recommend to make the angioedema activity score for at least 4 weeks. There's a maximum score of 96 points, and that gives a good impression how active the disease is. More specifically, on focusing on quality of life is the angioedema quality of life questionnaire. It's a questionnaire of 17 questions, and the patient are asked about the last 24 weeks. So this questionnaire is going backwards. That means that questionnaire can be done in the doctor's office. It takes 10-15 minutes to read it and to complete it, and it can be assessed immediately, in contrast to the angioedema activity score, which has to be assessed prospectively. So that's a benefit of the A equal, and the result of the A equal is a percentage. The percentage of impairment of quality of life. That means if the highest value is 100%, and 100% would mean that the quality of life is completely gone, is completely impaired by the disease. However, we have a rating, a scaling, that all above 30 points is, between 30 and 40 points is a mild impairment of quality of life, between 40 and 50, a moderate impairment of life, and above 50, it's a severe impairment of quality of life. This is a quick assessment, 10-15 minutes, and it helps really very well in an objective way to assess patients' quality of life, not only once to decide if treatment should be optimized, but also in the ongoing treatment to see if the result is as we, as doctors, expect to be. The latest questionnaire, and I think the most sophisticated, quickest, and with the highest impact on the treatment decision, is the angioedema control test. It's an extremely short questionnaire of only 4 questions. Patients are asked 4 questions about the disease control. And this is done, this refers to the last 4 weeks, respectively to the last 3 months. And depending on the number of attacks the patient is suffering from. And this is completed in 4 or 5 minutes. It can be assessed immediately. And the best in this questionnaire is there is a cutoff value, a threshold. That means immediately the doctor and the patient can assess or the disease is poorly controlled. The threshold is 10 points. That's just a sum of the answers. And 10 points or more means the disease is well controlled. 9 points or less means the disease is poorly controlled. There is a good reason to think about a change in the treatment, and that's extremely helpful. So we can measure disease activity, quality of life, and I think with the best tool we have at the moment, that's the control of attacks by on-demand treatment. That's the AECT, the angioedema control test. With this test, we can make these decisions. However, in times of Corona, it's hard to fill out questionnaires to make these decisions. And in times of Corona, we changed a lot to phone calls, to giving advice by the phone. We initiated video a consultation. That's extremely difficult in Germany due to the data protection law, but we got it finally. And many things can be clarified by phone or by video. And a lot of patients enjoy this way of interaction with the doctor. On the one hand, they have concerns to come to the clinic. On the other hand, 50% of our patients are not from Berlin and have to travel quite plenty of time, and the phone call is much quicker. However, because we can't send these questionnaires in paper form to the patients, we developed these most important questionnaires, the AECT and the AEQUAL, in electronic form. We send the patient a link, and with this link, we send the patients a code. So the patients can fill out a questionnaire, click on send, and for everybody an outstanding person seeing this data, the data is completely anonymous. Only in our center, we then can see that this number corresponds to a certain patient, and so the data protection is given with this tool. Some decisions can't be made by phone, some decisions can't be made by video conference. Treatment decisions are decisions that really have a big impact on life and treatment, and these decisions have to be made face by face. The faces are covered with masks right now, and in our clinic rooms we have a minimal distance of 1.5 meters between the doctor and the nurse and the patient and so on. It's a little bit annoying. Not all patients are coming to the clinic. First, before we make an appointment, we make a risk assessment. The risk that a patient, once infected with COVID-19, with corona, and to suffer a severe course of corona. And so we made an algorithm by the available data in the medical literature, and we considered age and coronary heart disease, asthma, diabetes, hypertonia, and we refining this algorithm if new data is available. So we came along with a sum score of 6 or higher, means that these patients have an increased risk once they are infected to suffer from a more severe disease or with a risk of mortality. And that's why we don't invite patients to our clinic with a risk score higher than 6 or higher. These patients are treated by phone or by video conference, and only if the risk is low and acceptable, we make a face-to-face clinic with new patients, for example, with known patients with urgent indications, with treatment changes or treatment initiations. Nevertheless, the patients have a lot of questions, especially around COVID-19. Not all questions can be answered by phone or by one of us. There are too many questions around the world from other doctors, and that's why information in these times is the most important, and communication information is done on websites, and we have here a nice website directed to angioedema patients with the latest information about COVID-19 or the HAE in times of COVID-19, the risk of infection, the risk to suffer from a severe course. And this website is from HAE. You might not have heard about HAE. This is the link to the information site. You might not have heard about HAE. HAE is a joint initiative network created from HAEI, HAE International, and Galen Allergy Research Network. And the centers, treatment centers, can apply to get a member of HAE. And after a very thorough and rigid assessment process, where the centers have to show that they treat their patients according to guideline, that they use modern medicines if available, that they have the best possible care for the patients, they get a certificate and are HAE part of this network. In a few months, this HAE network has spread around the world. It's present in almost all continents, and it provides really a good foundation of knowledge, of networking for the next years, for the future. So it provides excellence in angioedema management. It increases the knowledge of angioedema in research, studies, and education. It promotes awareness of angioedema by advocacy activities in politics, in the payers of healthcare system, and so on. I think that is what we need for the future to cope with the future challenges we have. The future has not only challenges for us, the future has some interesting developments for us. And when I talked the last time about a future, one of the most promising drugs was lanadelumab, developed by Daiichi, later Shire, now Takeda. You might have heard from Mark, it's a monoclonal antibody. Its name is Takhzyro now. The new thing of Takhzyro is that clinical studies are running for children. Takhzyro currently is licensed from the age of 12 years, and a clinical study is ongoing with children between 2 and 11 years to make these drug available for the younger ages as well. I think that's very meaningful. There are clinical studies, not ongoing, but they are planned, to my knowledge, for hereditary angioedema with normal C1 inhibitor. It's the first time that a big clinical study is performed for the treatment of hereditary angioedema with normal C1 inhibitor. That's great that these patients are not longer neglected. And the same is true for acquired angioedema or angioedema due to acquired C1 inhibitor deficiency. These patients were never considered in clinical studies. There is no treatment at all, no licensed treatment at all for these patients. And that's fantastic that these patients hopefully will get a drug which is licensed, effective, and safe. Quite close to approval by the health authorities is product from BioCryst. It's BCX 7353 berotralstat is its name. It's an oral kallikrein inhibitor. So it's a kallikrein is the central player in the kinin cascade, blocking kallikrein. Lanadelumab shows it, and ecallantide shows it. Blocking kallikrein is an effective way to avoid excess of bradykinin. The benefit of this drug, it's oral drug. It's given once daily, and with a dose of 110 and 150 milligrams. These were the dosing in the studies. It has shown a very significant reduction in the number of attacks. You see here the 150 milligram dose in the one study and in the other study, and you see the reduction is significant, and the reduction is very stable over the time, and I think that's very promising. We see here again the attack rate in the one study going down and stable on a very low level, and here it's another study, that's the placebo phase, and we see here the verum, and the verum on a very low level, the attacks markedly better than the placebo control. And this is another statistic view, that's the median, that shows that the majority of the patients have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months in the year without any attack. So half of the time, no attack, and in the other half of the month, one attack. So this is a quite good result, and probably very soon the drug will be licensed in the US. The company expects an approval in 2000 this year, in Japan approval in this year hopefully, and in Europe next year. So this is the next drug, if everything goes well, available for treatment of hereditary angioedema. So it's a prophylactic treatment. CSL Behring is not longer producing only a C1 inhibitor. They have looked where C1 inhibitor is working, and C1 inhibitor is working on factor 12A. And so they developed an antibody against factor 12A to block the cascade exactly at this point. There is, unfortunately, there is absolutely no data available in the internet, and it's hard to find something. We are participating in the study, and I know other study centers, and so between us, I can tell you, it seems to work really good. The patients participating in the study are really happy, and I'm looking forward to see how the results in detail are. And I fingers crossed that this drug will come to the market one day. An extremely interesting approach with a big impact in research, because it's a completely different kind of drug, is antisense drug. Antisense drug is a completely different approach. It's not an antibody, it's not a designed molecule, it's not a copy of something in the cascade. It doesn't block a receptor, but it's going direction to genetic treatment. It's not genetic treatment, but it goes to the direction. You know that kallikrein is activated pre-kallikrein, and pre-kallikrein is a protein that needs to be produced by the body, by the cells, and the cells produce proteins at the ribosomes, and the ribosomes need a copy of the DNA. In the DNA is the information how prekallikrein is built, and there is a copy done in the nucleus of the cell. This copy is the messenger RNA. Here is the information how prekallikrein is made, and this RNA goes to the ribosomes, and the ribosomes are the machines and produce the prekallikrein. And here the protein, the prekallikrein, is released and then activated and turned to kallikrein and causing the problem in HAE patients. So the drug is the red snake, and the red snake is RNA, is DNA, sorry, is DNA, very similar to the RNA. It's a copy. It's like a mirrored copy of this RNA, of this specific prekallikrein RNA, and it fits perfectly to it. It doesn't fit anywhere else. It doesn't fit in RNA of kininogen. It doesn't fit in the RNA of factor 12. It doesn't fit anywhere except in the RNA of prekallikrein, and that's why the prekallikrein RNA is blocked, can't be read by the ribosomes, and no prekallikrein is produced. So it's a very interesting approach. It's given subcutaneously. The studies are ongoing in the US. To my knowledge, the company is called Ionis, and the product is called Ionis PKK LRX. I think the name will change in the future. And it's developed for prophylaxis. Another drug currently under study, under research, is Calvista. It's a KVD 900. It's a designed molecule. It's a little bit similar to the berotralstat. However, the potency seems to be higher in this drug, and the bioavailability a little bit higher, and it acts as well on the kallikrein as a orally taken designed molecule, and that's why it's developed for on-demand treatment. I think there are no concerns that it can be used for long-term prophylaxis in the future as well, but the company first focuses on on-demand treatment, and that would be the first oral on-demand treatment. I think this is a medical gap, a medical need to provide oral treatment for on-demand. Pharvaris is a company very recently came into my eyes. They also developed a designed molecule. They also want to make it available orally, and it acts on the bradykinin 2 receptor. So this drug, it acts similar like icatibant. It blocks the bradykinin 2 receptor, and it's like icatibant. It's told by the company that it's 60 times more potent than icatibant, and it has obviously a longer half-life. And so we can speculate about the benefits of this drug once introduced, that there is no pain during the application because there's no injection at all. There are no rebounds because of the longer half-life. However, there's maybe a slower onset of efficacy because it first has to go to the gut and resolve by the body. And I wonder why it shouldn't be used for prophylaxis as well. So that's a quite interesting approach as well. I'm at the end of my lecture. I'd like to conclude. The current available number of treatment options is quite good. Not in all countries, but the drugs we have right now for treatment in Europe and US is higher than ever in history. And I think many patients have benefited from these changes of the last 10, 15 years. All patients should have on-demand treatment. Some patients or many patients need long-term prophylaxis. When this treatment is changed, the decision is difficult and complex and is based on several parameters like quality of life, like the activity of the disease, and the control by the current treatment. And these parameters can be measured with validated tools. Most of them all of them are easily to fill out. It takes, especially in quality of life and control test, it needs between 5 and 15 minutes, and the results are easy to interpret. We live in difficult times at the moment as Corona limits the number of patient contacts. So we need to be flexible. We have to change to phone calls, to video conferences with our patients. However, some patients need to be seen in the clinic to make important decisions. And we developed a risk assessment that helps us to find the best way to give advice to these patients without putting the patients without putting the patient in a special risk to be infected by Corona. The situation is a challenge for doctors and for patients as well. We get a lot of requests of advice, or the patients need information about their situation and the impact of Corona to their life, to their medication, to the disease in general. And this information has to be given. A new player in the field to provide information, reliable information, is HAE. It's a joint project of HAEI and Galen. It's a very fast-growing network with a goal to improve patients' care worldwide, and it will help us it will help us to better treat our patients. A better treatment of our patients will be possible in the future, hopefully, because a lot of drugs are under development. New drugs, new indications will close the medical needs and the gaps we have right now. For example, new indications, acquired angioedema, hereditary angioedema with normal C1 inhibitor, children, and are now under testing of lanadelumab. We will get oral on-demand treatment, oral prophylaxis. I told you about completely new mechanisms of action, like the antisense DNA. So that's all very interesting. The future drugs will help us to treat our patients better, but at the same time, the future drugs will make the decision about the treatment much more complex, but I'm very confident that we are well prepared to cope with these challenges we have in the future. And I'm looking forward to live in the future. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in the Global Virtual Conference. It was my pleasure. I wish you interesting and nice day. Unfortunately not in my home country, but my best greetings to you wherever you are. Bye bye.